Level 1. At the lowest level of naval combat in World War II were convoy skirmishes, small but deadly battles fought to protect or attack supply ships. These merchant ships carried fuel, food and weapons that kept countries alive. The Battle of the Atlantic began on the 3rd of September 1939. The same day, Britain declared war on Germany and lasted until 1945. German U-boats hunted in groups called wolf packs, waiting in the dark ocean to strike passing convoys. Each convoy could have 30 to 50 ships, escorted by small warships like corvettes and destroyers armed with sonar, called ASDIC, and depth charges. The U-boats tried to starve Britain by sinking cargo, while Allied sailors worked day and night to keep trade routes open. By early 1943, around 3,500 merchant ships had been sunk. But in May 1943, after losing over 40 U-boats in 1 month, Germany pulled back, ending its early advantage at sea. Level 2. The next level of naval warfare in World War II was the deadly duel between submarines and destroyers. Submarines, especially German U-boats, used stealth and patience, waiting for targets under the waves. Destroyers were their primary hunters, armed with sonar, called ASDIC, and racks of depth charges that exploded underwater to crush hulls. The first major submarine destroyer battles began in 1940 as Allied escort groups learned to hunt wolf packs across the North Atlantic. The Type 7 U-boat, Germany's most common model, could stay submerged for 12 to 16 hours and carried 14 torpedoes. Destroyers like the British HMS Walker and HMS Vanoc became famous for sinking U-99 and U-100 in March 1941. As technology improved, the Allies added Hedgehog anti-sub weapons and air patrols from escort carriers. By 1943, these combined tactics made the ocean far more dangerous for U-boats, shifting control of the Atlantic toward the Allied fleets. Level 3. At this level, naval battles took place above the waves, between destroyers, cruisers and battleships, exchanging direct gunfire. These surface ship duels were fast, chaotic, and often decided by radar, weather and visibility. Early in the war, engagements like the Battle of the River Plate on the 13th of December 1939 showed the power of coordination. 3 British cruisers forced the German pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee to scuttle itself off Uruguay. Throughout 1940 to 1942, night battles near Norway and the Mediterranean tested new technologies such as radar rangefinders and flashless gunpowder. The Battle of Cape Matapan in March 1941 became a turning point when British radar allowed surprise night attacks that sank 3 Italian heavy cruisers. Typical duels involved rapid gunnery exchanges from 10 to 20 kilometres away, with armour-piercing shells capable of tearing through steel hulls. These encounters demanded precision, discipline and mastery of ship-to-ship tactics under fire. Level 4. By the middle of World War II, aircraft carriers replaced battleships as the most powerful tools at sea. These floating air bases could launch dozens of fighter and bomber aircraft hundreds of kilometres away. The first major carrier-only battle was the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942, where ships from the United States and Japan fought without ever seeing each other directly. It was followed by the Battle of Midway in June 1942, where American carrier planes sank 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, turning the tide of the Pacific War. Carrier groups relied on complex coordination between reconnaissance, torpedo bombers, and dive bombers, protected by fighter escorts. Operations were guided by radar and coded communications. By 1944, massive battles like Leyte Gulf showed how carrier strikes had become the dominant force of naval warfare, replacing gunnery duels with the new age of aerial sea power. Level 5. At this level, naval warfare expanded beyond the sea itself, combining ships, aircraft, and ground troops in massive amphibious assaults. These operations were designed to land soldiers directly onto enemy-held beaches under heavy fire. The earliest large-scale example was Operation Torch in November 1942, when Allied fleets carried American and British troops to North Africa. Later, in the Pacific, the United States perfected this method during battles like Tarawa, November 1943, and Iwo Jima, February 1945. Each assault required hundreds of landing craft, naval gunfire support and air cover from carriers overhead. The largest amphibious invasion in history was D-Day on the 6th of June 1944, when over 5,000 ships and 156,000 troops crossed the English Channel to storm the beaches of Normandy. Amphibious warfare demanded flawless timing and coordination. Every ship, plane and soldier depended on precise naval planning to turn the tide on land. Level 6. At this stage, naval warfare reached its grand scale, entire fleets clashing across vast oceans over several days. These major fleet engagements decided the balance of power at sea. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 involved more than 1,500 aircraft and over 30 carriers, battleships and cruisers, resulting in the near destruction of Japan's naval air arm. Earlier, the Battle of Midway, June 1942, had already crippled Japan's carrier force, but by October 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf became the largest naval battle in history, with around 300 ships engaged across multiple, coordinated attacks. Battleships like the USS Iowa and Yamato unleashed heavy artillery while aircraft dominated the skies above. Radar, code-breaking and air superiority decided outcomes more than raw firepower. These massive engagements marked the final era of large-scale surface warfare, showing how strategy, intelligence and technology shaped victory at sea. Level 7. At the highest level, naval combat became part of total war, where entire nations mobilized their industries, economies and populations to control the seas. This phase blurred the line between front lines and home fronts. Shipyards in the United States produced over 2,700 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945, ensuring constant flow of supplies to Allied forces. Japan, facing resource shortages, turned to desperate one-way missions like kamikaze attacks during late 1944 and 1945. Britain maintained a constant blockade around German-occupied Europe, cutting access to vital imports such as oil and rubber. The Allies' combined naval supremacy allowed invasions in Africa, Italy and the Pacific while strangling Axis logistics. By 1945, the sea was not just a battlefield. It was a global supply network and a weapon of economic destruction. Control of the oceans ultimately decided who could sustain the war and who would collapse beneath it.